Sold out. I adopted my niece. But her mom tried to buy her back. Okay. Buckle up. Because this story is a roller coaster. I thought I'd escaped the dysfunction of my family years ago. But it turns out some things just keep circling back, ready to crash into your life when you least expect it. Growing up as the second daughter in the Wilson family was like living in a never-ending shadow cast by my sister, Jessica. She was 5 years older and, according to our parents, practically perfect in every way. I learned that lesson early, in ways big and small. I remember one time when I was 6. I got in on my math test and raced home, bursting with excitement, eager to show Mom and Dad. They were in the kitchen, completely absorbed in Jessica's new dance routine. "That's nice, honey," Mom mumbled, barely glancing at me. I stood there, clutching my test until the paper felt limp in my hands, and then quietly retreated to my room. The pattern never changed. Jessica got new clothes from the mall, while I got her hand-me-downs. She got the latest iPhone, while I got a flip phone and was told to be grateful. "Your sister is going places," Dad would say whenever I dared to complain. "She needs these things for her future. It's an investment." Even our paternal grandparents reinforced the hierarchy with their perfectly manicured lawn and constant displays of favoritism. Every time we visited, Grandma Margaret would greet Jessica with enormous hugs and excited squeals, then acknowledge my existence like it was an afterthought. When Jessica unwrapped a brand new laptop for her schoolwork, Grandpa would shoot me a condescending smile and say, "This is more your speed, isn't it?" But I had my own sanctuary, my maternal grandparents, Grandma Eleanor and Grandpa George, who lived in a modest ranch-style home on the other side of town. There, I was treated like I mattered, like my existence had value. They hung my artwork on their fridge, right next to photos of me. Jessica hated going there. "It's so boring," she'd complain. "They don't even have a pool. And Grandma Eleanor never lets me choose what we watch on TV." So she stopped visiting, leaving them all to myself. While our parents were busy shuttling Jessica to her endless parade of activities, ballet 1 month, horse riding the next, then violin lessons. She'd quit after 3 weeks. I spent my afternoons at Eleanor and George's. They taught me to bake cookies, helped me with homework, and never once compared me to my sister. I was 10 when my parents delivered the final verdict on my worth to the family. They called a family meeting, though it felt more like a trial where the sentence had been decided long before the proceedings even began. It was a Sunday afternoon in October, and all 6 adults arranged themselves around our living room. Mom and Dad stood by the fireplace, looking somber. Both sets of grandparents sat on the matching sofas. The atmosphere was heavy with manufactured importance. "We need to discuss something serious," Dad began, his hands clasped behind his back like a businessman about to announce layoffs. "As you know, a college education isn't getting any cheaper." I watched Jessica straighten up in her chair, smoothing her perfect blonde hair. At 15, she was already practicing her future college student persona. I sat still, my hands folded in my lap, bracing myself for what I knew was coming. "We've been saving since the girls were born," Dad continued, pausing for dramatic effect before announcing the obvious winner. "But there's only enough for one of them to go to college. Jessica would be starting college in 3 years," Dad announced with a self-satisfied grin. "She's shown remarkable talent in so many areas. It's important we support her potential." He then turned to me, his expression a mix of dismissal and fake sympathy. "Robin, honey, you're different." Grandma Margaret, Dad's mother, nodded enthusiastically. "Jessica is so gifted," she gushed. "Just last week, her dance teacher said she had natural grace. She needs the best education possible. Not talented enough. Not worth investing in. Not special. Like Jessica." The familiar message, now officially stamped and sealed. But then something unexpected happened. Grandpa George stood up, This is absolutely unfair, he declared, his voice trembling with anger. How dare you write off a 10-year-old child like this? My father started to object, but Grandma Eleanor cut him off. If you won't support both your daughters equally, she announced, her eyes blazing with defiance, Eleanor and I will. I watched as my maternal grandparents stood up together, united in their disgust. Robin will have her chance at college, Grandma Eleanor added, her voice ringing with conviction. Then they walked out, leaving a stunned silence behind. Later that night, I was heading to the kitchen for water when I heard my parents talking in their bedroom. The heating vent carried their words clearly up to the hallway. Eleanor's being ridiculous, Mom hissed. She can barely keep up in regular classes. They should give us that money for Jessica's education instead. It would be wasted on Robin. She's just not bright enough. Dad agreed. I don't know why they're pushing this. I stood there in the dark hallway, their words washing over me like a familiar, bitter rain. But somehow, it didn't hurt as much as it used to. Maybe because I'd heard it all before. Instead, a fierce promise echoed in my head. And so, Jessica went off to an expensive private college, while I finished high school, watching from the sidelines. My parents never missed a chance to brag about their perfect daughter, constantly updating everyone about Jessica's amazing college experience. I focused on my own studies, spending most of my time at Grandma Eleanor and Grandpa George's. Their quiet praise meant more to me than all the lavish praise Jessica ever received. Then came the day that shattered my parents' perfect vision of their golden child. I was in my senior year when Jessica came home from college, fresh from graduation, but far from triumphant. I was doing homework at the kitchen table when she burst through the front door, mascara running down her face, sobbing uncontrollably. Mom, Dad, I'm pregnant. The silence that followed was deafening. Mom dropped her coffee mug, dark liquid spreading across the kitchen floor like a stain. Who's the father? Dad finally asked, his voice tight with suppressed rage. Jessica's next word sent Mom collapsing into a chair. I don't know for sure. I watched my parents' faces as their perfect, carefully constructed world crumbled around them. But it took them less than 5 minutes to reconstruct it, piece by twisted piece. Oh, sweetie, Mom gushed, rushing to hug Jessica. It's not your fault. These things happen. We'll help you raise the baby. Dad added quickly. You can stay here with us. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Are you serious? I asked, incredulous. Jessica gets pregnant, doesn't even know who the father is, and you're still making excuses for her. Robin, that's enough. No. Listen, I continued, years of frustration finally boiling over. This is what happens when you spoil someone their entire life. When you never make them face consequences. How dare you? Dad thundered, his face turning red. Your sister is going through a difficult time. And you're being cruel. Jessica burst into fresh tears, and Mom wrapped her arms around her protectively. Get out, she screamed at me, her voice shrill with anger. I didn't wait to hear the rest. I ran upstairs, threw some clothes into a bag, and walked out, leaving behind the sounds of Mom cooing to Jessica, telling her everything would be okay, that none of this was her fault. Grandma Eleanor and Grandpa George took me in without question. I finished my senior year living with them, focusing on my college applications. My parents didn't call, didn't check on me, didn't even show up at my graduation. But I had my real family there. My grandparents beaming with pride as I accepted my diploma. That fall, I left for college in another city, my tuition paid for by my grandparents. I heard through the grapevine that Jessica had given birth to a daughter, a little girl named Lucy, and I had no doubt they were still making excuses for her. Life has a funny way of working out. While Jessica's brilliant future had crumbled, I thrived. After graduating college with honors, I landed a job at a top consulting firm in the city. I became a senior consultant, got my own apartment, and built a life I loved. My routine was comfortable, challenging work during the week, weekend brunch with friends, and regular video calls with Grandma Eleanor and Grandpa George. I was accomplished, independent, and happy, and that was all the family validation I needed. Then, on a regular Tuesday morning, my phone rang. I almost dropped my coffee when I saw Mom's number flash across the screen, a number I hadn't seen in almost a decade. Robin. Her voice sounded older, wearier. Jessica's gone. Again. Apparently, she had met some guy at a bar, this time with a different story about his life. Please come home, Mom pleaded. We need to discuss this in person. That's how I found myself driving back to my childhood home that evening. The house looked smaller than I remembered, the paint peeling around the windows. Mom and Dad had aged more than I expected. Dad's hair was completely gray now, and Mom's face was lined with worrying. They led me to the living room, where the silence was suffocating. Jessica's been unstable, Dad began, staring at his hands. She's been bouncing from apartments, from jobs. She always ended up back here. Mom wiped her eyes. We paid for everything. But last week she met this guy, Robert, and said he was taking her to California to become an actress. She laughed bitterly. She packed a bag and left. Didn't even say goodbye to Lucy. We're drowning in debt, Dad admitted, his voice cracking. Credit cards, personal loans, all to keep Jessica afloat. And I waited for the rest, watching them squirm uncomfortably on the couch that had faded from cream to dingy beige. We want you to take Lucy. Adopt her. I sat there, stunned. These people, who had written me off as worthless, who hadn't even come to my graduation, were now asking me to take responsibility for a child I'd never met. A child they'd helped raise for 9 years while enabling Jessica's chaos. After my parents went to bed that night, I sat in the kitchen with Lucy. She was nothing like I expected. Nothing like Jessica. While my sister had been loud and demanding, Lucy was quiet and thoughtful, with serious brown eyes. I noticed Harry Potter on the kitchen counter. You like to read? I asked. Yes, she replied softly. But Grandma says I read too much. She says I should do something useful instead. As Lucy slowly opened up, she told me about her life with my parents, about how Grandma sighed heavily whenever she had to make Lucy dinner, about how Grandpa complained about the cost of her school supplies. The lack of affection, the constant disapproval, was palpable in every interaction. I spent the next week taking time off work, getting to know Lucy. I discovered she was smart, kind, and remarkably resilient despite everything she'd been through. She showed me her straight-A report cards that no one had ever celebrated, her artwork that never made it to the fridge. The decision to adopt her wasn't easy, but watching Lucy try to make herself smaller, quieter, less visible, just as I had at her age, sealed the deal. The legal process was exhausting. For months, I gathered documentation, my financial records, character references, proof of stable employment. Jessica didn't contest the termination of her parental rights, didn't even show up for the hearing. Finally, after endless paperwork and interviews, I became Lucy's legal guardian. Don't forget to forward her school records, the judge said casually. Lucy flourished in our new life together. She decorated her room in our apartment with fairy lights and bookshelves, joined the school's debate team, and made friends who came over for movie nights and study sessions. We developed our own little rituals: Sunday morning pancakes, evening walks in the park, marathon sessions of board games. Visits to Grandma Eleanor and Grandpa George became a highlight for both of us. They showered Lucy with the love and support she had always deserved, proudly displaying her artwork and report cards, remembering her favorite foods, and listening to her stories with genuine interest. Lucy turned 14, growing into a confident, compassionate teenager who consistently made the honor roll. My parents never called to check on her, never sent birthday cards. But Lucy didn't seem to mind. She had found her real family. Then the phone call from my parents came on a Saturday morning. "We'd like you and Lucy to come visit," Mom said, her voice suspiciously cheerful. "We miss her." After 5 years of silence, the sudden interest set off alarm bells. But I decided to go anyway. Lucy deserved to make her own choices about family relationships, and I didn't want to be the one standing in her way. The moment we walked through their front door, I knew something was wrong. Jessica was there, sitting on the couch like she'd never left. "Oh, baby, I've missed you so much," she gushed, rushing towards Lucy. I watched Lucy's face carefully. She stood frozen, emotions flickering across her features: hope, fear, confusion, longing. Jessica wrapped her in a tearful embrace. "I've changed," Jessica announced, wiping her eyes dramatically. "I want my daughter back." The word "back" hit me like a slap. She'd finally decided to reclaim the child she'd abandoned. "I'm living in Phoenix now," Jessica continued, her voice taking on a saccharine sweetness. "Robert is there. He's got a great job. And we have a beautiful house." "Do you have a job?" I asked, barely keeping my voice level. Jessica smiled airily. "Well, not right now. But Robert makes enough for all of us." "And what happens if things don't work out with Robert? What's your backup plan? Why are you being so negative?" Mom snapped. "Your sister is trying to do the right thing." I laughed incredulously. The right thing would have been not abandoning her daughter for 5 years. The right thing would have been sending birthday cards, making phone calls, showing any interest at all in Lucy's life. "I made mistakes," Jessica wailed, tears streaming down her face. "But she's my daughter. Stop being selfish." "Robin," Dad cut in. "Lucy needs her real mother now. You can have your own children if you want to play mommy so badly." I stared at them, stunned by their cruelty. These people, who had failed not one but 2 daughters with their enabling and irresponsibility for decades, who had never once in 5 years asked how Lucy was doing in school, were now lecturing me about family and responsibility. I could see the cycle of dysfunction continuing. "She's a person who needs stability and real love, not empty promises," I retorted. "Where were you when she had nightmares? When she was sick? When she won the school spelling bee? Where were any of you?" "You have no right," Jessica screamed. "She's my child." I glanced at Lucy, saw the hurt and confusion in her eyes, and grabbed her hand. "We're leaving," I announced, squeezing her hand reassuringly. "And don't you dare try to contact us." Jessica's call came exactly a week after our confrontation. When I saw her number, I almost didn't answer, but something told me I needed to hear what she had to say. I hit record, a habit I developed after years of dealing with difficult clients. "Hey," she said, her voice strangely calm. "I've been thinking about our situation, and I think I have a solution that could work for everyone." "What situation?" I asked, my guard immediately going up. "Lucy?" "Of course," she replied. "Look, I know you've gotten attached to her, and I know you make good money at your fancy job. So here's the deal. Give me $150. 0. And I won't sue for custody." The phone nearly slipped from my hand. "Excuse me," Jessica continued casually. "Let me get this straight. You want me to pay you $150. 0 to keep Lucy? Don't be so dramatic," she said, her sweet tone vanishing. "I'm just being practical. You want Lucy. I need money. Simple business transaction. She's your child, Jessica, not a used car." "Fine," she snapped. "Have it your way. I'll sue for custody. And you'll never see her again." She hung up, and I sat there clutching my phone, feeling sick to my stomach. The lawsuit came 3 days later. Jessica's new boyfriend had hired her a slick lawyer who specialized in family court. The initial filing painted Jessica as a reformed mother who had been taken advantage of in a temporary situation. During the hearing, Jessica even cried, tears streaming down her face as she told the judge about her journey of personal growth. She claimed I had alienated Lucy from her and that I was using her daughter to prove I was better than my sister. Mom and Dad even suggested I only asked me to take Lucy temporarily while Jessica got back on her feet. Dad even suggested I was emotionally manipulating Lucy to turn her against her mother. I sat there listening to their lies, watching them spin their web of deception. But I had come prepared. Your Honor, my lawyer said, I'd like to submit an audio recording into evidence. Then the room filled with Jessica's voice. Crystal clear, give me $150. 0. And I won't sue for custody. Simple business transaction. The silence that followed was deafening. Jessica's lawyer stammered, trying to regain control. But the damage was done. Our parents sat frozen in their seats, their faces a mixture of shock and shame. The judge then asked Lucy who she wanted to live with. At 1-4, she seemed suddenly older, wiser beyond her years. I want to stay with Robin, she said clearly. My mother abandoned me. Robin saved me. I could see the realization wash over Jessica that she'd lost her leverage. And Lucy stood tall, finally free of the weight of her mother's shadow. The judge's decision was swift and unequivocal. Not only did I retain full custody of Lucy, but the judge also called Jessica's attempt to sell custody morally reprehensible. I watched Jessica crumble as the ruling was read, her face contorted with rage and defeat. Her boyfriend, who had been sitting in the back of the courtroom, stood up and walked out without a word. Later, I heard he left her the same day, disgusted by her attempt to sell her own child. My parents tried to catch us in the courthouse parking lot. Robin, please, Mom called out. We can work this out as a family. I turned to face them one last time. Family? I asked, my voice dripping with sarcasm. Lucy deserves better than what you did to me, what you let Jessica do to her. Robert left. Mom whined, her voice filled with self-pity. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Of course he did. And I bet you're still worried about Jessica. Even now. Some things never change. Jessica moved back in with our parents, right back where she started. The golden child, still being coddled, still failing to grow up. But this time, I knew Lucy and I were finally free. Since then, our irreplaceable life went on. Lucy threw herself into her studies with renewed energy. The burden lifted from her shoulders. She joined the school's newspaper team, started taking photography classes, and began talking about wanting to study journalism in college. One night, as we were cuddling on the couch, watching a movie, she said, for years, I thought something was wrong with me because Mom kept leaving. But now I realize she was the one with the problem. She never knew how to love anyone but herself. I hugged her tight, amazed by her wisdom. You're the strongest person I know. Kiddo, I whispered. Grandma Eleanor and Grandpa George remained our constant support system. Sundays at their house became a sacred tradition. They proudly displayed Lucy's photography in their living room, bragged about her achievements to their friends, and saved newspaper clippings of every article she wrote for the school paper. They saved each other, just as they had saved me. Grandma Eleanor is now teaching me to use his new digital camera, Lucy mentioned. Just like George and I tried to save you, Eleanor said, smiling gently. In trying to give Lucy the childhood I never had, I found the family I'd always wanted. Not the one I was born into, but the one we chose together. Jessica hasn't contacted us since the court case, and I delete her emails on read. Lucy hasn't heard from her mother since the court case, and she says she prefers it that way. Some bridges, once burned, can never be rebuilt. And as Lucy prepares to enter her school's journalism competition, I thought about cycles broken, wounds healed, and the enduring power of chosen family. So, Reddit, after hearing all of this, I have to ask, do you think I handled this situation the right way? Was there anything else I could have done to protect Lucy? Or should I have tried harder to get through to my parents? Please share your thoughts and opinions. I'm genuinely interested in hearing your perspectives on this complicated family drama and figuring out if I made the best decisions for Lucy given the circumstances, as I'm still processing everything that's happened and hoping to gain some clarity from your feedback.